In 2021 calendar year 21, we had close to seen around 65 IPOs. Like in 2022, we had seen 39 IPOs, and this year, as you rightly said, in main board we have seen 19 IPOs. During the IPO process, company is very fairly open. If you would have looked at it, company actually also does lot of road shows, analyst meet, press meet, to spell out what are the plans of the company for next 2-3 years. So I'm just saying that is the time where you get a lot of information. So idea is to hold good set of companies, build on it. That is one. Second, interesting is that you're not playing single theme, you're playing multiple themes.
Hey guys, a very warm welcome to yet another super interesting episode of the Fisdom Wealthcast. So, whether you switch your TVs on or you pick the newspaper, there's one thing that's sure to be making all the headlines, and that is IPOs, initial public offerings. There seems to be such a frenzy around IPOs, and it only makes sense to understand a whole lot more about this world of IPOs. So today with us we have one of the finest experts in the segment. We have Mr. Bharat Lahoti, who is the fund manager at Edelweiss Mutual Fund. So Bharat has a wide and extensive experience in the financial services industry, and very specifically in the area of portfolio management, macro research, and sector research. So Bharat has been working with marquee investment banks and large asset management companies. Just before Edelweiss, he was also working with DE Shaw Group, which is a global hedge fund, as a senior manager working on fundamental and quantitative research ideas. So Bharat is equipped with a host of professional competencies, but also academic degrees. He has completed his MMS and also his bachelor's in engineering. He strongly believes that discipline and persistence are the most important qualities that one can have, and that can make you or break you. So one very important thing that I want to bring to your notice, आप सभी के मन में ये सवाल होगा कि आपने तो कह दिया कि ये एक एक्सपर्ट है, लेकिन हम कैसे मान ले, और केवल यही क्यों, इनसे ही क्यों हम बात कर रहे हैं आज? तो उसका एक जवाब एक शॉर्ट तरीके से आपको मैं बता देता हूँ. So Edelweiss recently listed IPO fund is probably the only fund in the industry that is focused on recently listed IPOs, like the name suggests. It has not just completed 5 years and has been able to constantly beat the benchmark, but at the same time, it is fantastically managed by the one and only Bharat Lahoti. So, and that's the reason why we have Bharat with us here today. So, Bharat, a very warm welcome to the Fisdom Wealthcast.
Thank you, Nirav. Thank you for the great introduction.
So, Bharat, we are super excited. हम डेली न्यूज़पेपर खोलते हैं, डेली टीवी देखते हैं, कोई ना कोई आईपीओ आ रहा है, और हर बार हम एक ही चीज सुन रहे हैं कि स्टेलर लिस्टिंग, स्टेलर डेब्यू, काफी एक लिस्टिंग पॉप, ये जो शब्द है ये बहुत घूम रहा है आजकल इन्वेस्टर और एनालिस्ट के बीच भी. अगर बीएसई मेन बोर्ड की बात की जाए तो इस साल में, इस कैलेंडर ईयर में तकरीबन 61 आईपीओज आए हुए हैं, अराउंड 61 आईपीओज, जिसमें से 19 आईपीओज बीएसई मेन बोर्ड पे है, राइट. और उसमें से केवल 2 ही ऐसे हैं जो कि डिस्काउंट पर लिस्ट हुआ है, बाकी सारे जो है वो प्रीमियम पर ही लिस्ट हुआ है. अभी इन सारों के चलते क्या आप ये हमें समझा सकते हैं कि पहली बात तो ये एक आईपीओ क्या होती है संक्षिप्त में हमारे रिटेल इन्वेस्टर्स के लिए, और ऐसा क्यों हो रहा है? क्या ये वाकई में बहुत ही अच्छे क्वालिटीज के आईपीओज है, या ये केवल एक्सूबरेंस है, केवल एक्साइटमेंट है जिसके कारण सारे आईपीओज listing day पे gains book कर रहे हैं?
Great. Thanks, Nirav, for calling us in this lovely audience to interact with it. Just to give you sense, initial public offering होता क्या है? जब भी एक नई कंपनी आती है, एक काम करती है और थोड़ा बहुत मार्केट में अपॉर्चुनिटी इवैल्यूएट करती है, तो उसके बाद उसको ग्रोथ के लिए नया पैसा चाहिए रहता है. और ये एक अकेला नहीं रीजन है आईपीओ आने का. तो मार्केट के अंदर दे कम टू मार्केट फॉर एक्चुअली रेजिंग कैपिटल. So they require capital, and hence the IPO comes in. So these companies actually take capital, raise capital in market, and hence they come in IPO market. Abhi, if you look at it in overall sense, IPO markets globally has been a very good strategy. You will get a good set of companies to actually play around. Why this is an important thing to note around is that these companies are very young. So when you start very young, there is opportunity to make a lot of money in many of these companies if you select it well. Or IPOs, if you have seen, and you're right, there has been many stellar listing of fast. But if you look at history of last 15-16 years, IPO will have its own ebbs and flows. But I'm just saying there would be many times where there would be many IPOs, there would be times where there were very few IPOs. If you look at last 15-16 years of history, on an average, in a year, you will have like 20 to 25 listing kind of stuff. We had seen some high listing like in 2021 calendar year 21, we had close to seen around 65 IPOs. Like in 2022, we had seen 39 IPOs. And this year, as you rightly said, in main board, we have seen 19 IPOs. And that's what we typically track to that extent, because those are the main companies which come to market to that extent. And why these are interesting, many of these companies which are today the market leaders or the chart toppers like Infosys, Reliance, and all those stuff, they had also come in the market through IPO route. So today you are seeing these companies on the chart, top of the chart, but at some point of time these were IPO companies, and consequently that is an interesting proposition to start off with. Obviously, when you look at it, why is this IPO is all about speculation, or is it about actually the companies doing well? As I said, there would be ebbs and flows. There would be times where many companies would be coming. There would be few companies which will going bust. If you look at history of last 7-8 years, or even historically, if you look at it, actually 2/3 of companies don't make money in IPO market. So you have to be very, very selective to do that exercise, and consequently, the requirement of a proper judgment is extremely important in IPO market. You would see actually in a bull market, you would see many IPOs coming in market, which is the case right now. If you look at it, market scaled from bottom of 16,000 Nifty levels to 20,000, and consequently, you would have seen many IPOs coming in market. In the times where there are not too much of capital market activity, there is fewer IPOs, but those IPOs also come at a very good, reasonable valuation. And then that is very exciting time in our opinion, where you can actually pick up some good companies at a very decent valuation. So I'm just saying, both in the bull market and bear market, you will have a lot of IPOs which will come in. But having said so, in our opinion, the way it happens off is that in a bull market, you will get a lot of IPOs, good listing day gain. You have to be very selective in what you're doing. In a bear market, you will get good set of companies at good valuation. So that is where the opportunity lies.
Fantastic, Bharat. So, you spoke about something so important that IPO market में ebbs and flows, यानी कि उतार चढ़ाव का सिलसिला in terms of excitement, exuberance चलते रहता है. एक जैसे कि आपने कहा कि bullish market में, तेजी के market में बहुत सारे IPOs launch होते हैं, but जरूरी ये नहीं कि हर IPO सही हो. और मंदी के market में भी काफी IPOs आते हैं, और हो सकता है कि उतने एक्सूबरेंस नहीं कैरी करे, पर जरूरी नहीं कि वो खराब कंपनीज है, राइट? ये एक सेंटिमेंट की एक फैक्टर प्ले कर जाती है वहां पर, जो उनका लिस्टिंग डे गेन्स या पॉप जिसे कहते हैं वो डिटरमाइन करता है. बट दैट इटसेल्फ इज नॉट अ डेफिनेशन ऑफ हाउ गुड और बैड एन आईपीओ इज, राइट? सो मैंने आपने एक बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट चीज की और जिक्र की कि जब भी आईपीओज इवैल्यूएट करते हैं तभी बहुत ही एक केयरफुल सा सिलेक्शन प्रोसेस को अपनाया जाना पड़ता है, राइट? सो एट द रिस्क ऑफ साउंडिंग क्लीशेड, एक कहा जाता है कि इवन द बेस्ट पायलट्स हैव टू यूज अ चेकलिस्ट. तो जब आप इन्वेस्ट करते हैं, हमने नोटिस करी है कि भले ही 19 आईपीओज आई है बीएसई मेन बोर्ड पर, ईडलवाइज रिसेंटली लिस्टेड आईपीओ फंड में तकरीबन 6 ही ऐसे आईपीओज है जो अभी फीचर कर रहे हैं. यू कैन करेक्ट मी इफ आई एम रॉन्ग, द एस्टिमेट इज अराउंड 6 such IPOs that the fund has invested in. So you are clearly very selective. ऐसा नहीं है कि sentiment है और exuberance है तो आप केवल participate करने के लिए और listing day के लिए आप participate कर, आप बहुत ही selectively ये select कर रहे हो. और एक ये सेंस आ रहा है कि आपका भी खुद का एक चेकलिस्ट है. तो क्या वो चेकलिस्ट, वो मेथोडोलॉजी आप हमारे व्यूअर्स, दर्शकों के साथ शेयर कर सकते हैं? और जब आप वो शेयर करेंगे, ऐसे कौन सी चीजें हैं जो वो भी अपना सकता है एज अ रिटेल इन्वेस्टर? वो खुद क्या देख के एक निर्णय सही तरीके से ले सकता है?
Great. Nirav, just to give you a sense, you're right, our participation rate is pretty low in the IPO markets in general. If you look at our history of the funds, there has been around 250 companies which have listed in the last 6 years kind of stuff, where we could have participated in some format in of the IPO funds. We have participated in somewhere around 80, 85, 90 companies. So our participation rate is something like 1/3. 3 IPO में से 1 IPO में participate करते हैं. ये अभी right बोला आप, 19 companies में से we have participated in 6. of them. So again, the rate is same. Out of three IPOs, we are participating in one of them. One of the reason, as I said, uh, typically two-thirds of companies don't make money. So we have to be very, very selective in what we are doing it. And when we select companies, we are not selecting only from listing day gain perspective. Listing day is very small part of the overall return perspective. When we look at many of these companies in hindsight, I'm just saying, giving examples of some of the big wigs like Reliance, Infosys, and all those stuff. These companies have come in IPOs and they have created a lot of wealth over a period of time. If you had sold the companies at the listing day gain kind of stuff, things would have not made money to that extent. So idea is to buy set of companies and hold and get the benefits of earnings of the company actually, and not on primarily on the listing day gain. What happens is that if you look at it, how do we go about in terms of selection of the IPOs? For us, the IPO research actually starts when the company files for draft read DRHP, which is called draft read hearing prospectus. Now, this is a document which company files while with the SEBI for an IPO process kind of stuff. Now, this is very important document because the company actually spells out a lot of data with respect to it in terms of what was the history of the company, how did the company incorporated, who are the promoters, what are the background of the promoters, what are the financial of the promoters. They give the entire industry background also in this fund. If you look at history kind of stuff, people have actually reading some of the DRHPs of erstwhile company, like people are reading DRHP of Walmart. What did Walmart say at that point of time? What did Amazon said about during that point of time, and how they have shaped over a period of time. So it's an important document in the life of the company, and it's very important to read that document actually to make a mind in terms of whether the company also spells out risk factors. It's an exhaustive document in terms of company spelling out whatever they think is a risk to the company is also there in that document to that extent. So it's an important document to read out. For us, the research starts from that process. And I'm just saying it's a bottom-up research because you will see many companies coming from different set of themes. There are companies coming from manufacturing to service industries, sometimes banking, sometimes healthcare, sometimes internet development companies. So I'm just saying it's a bottom-up approach. Each of the company requires a different lens to look at it, and hence it's an exhaustive process to that extent. What are the checklist? Actually, we look at it as we and this is the time when the company is also very open to talk to people. I'm just saying post IPO or post listing, there are a few things which company might not be able to share it off, but as during the IPO process, company is very fairly open. If you would have looked at it, company actually also does lot of road shows, analyst meet, press meet to spell out what are the plans of the company for next 2 3 years. So I'm just saying that is the time where you get a lot of information. You also trying to get a lot of information while visiting the company's factories and get an insight about the company, how the company actually is doing things. Three things what we do primarily from the fact is one, we also, apart from meeting company, we also meet the suppliers of the company. So I'm just saying whoever supplies the company, we tend to actually meet all those suppliers. We also meet customers of the company. So that is also, we do a lot of things in that. Okay, what are the customers saying about the company, whether the product is good, whether the services they are providing is of top notch, and how they are looking at it. We also meet competitors of the company. So I'm just saying that is also part of the checklist which we do to understand the company in more in detail. Apart from that, we also do is do a lot of financial analysis of the company in terms of how the company has behaved across cycles. In a good cycle, how the company was making margins, what were the return ratios. I'm just saying all details have been actually put down. We also look at some of the history of the promoters, what the promoters are doing in their personal capacity, what are the promoters doing with respect to the cash flow, what it gets generated, are there any litigations, anything on the company side, promoter side. We do a lot of cross checks with respect to that. So those are the checklists which we typically tend to do. Apart from the financial analysis and industry analysis, what we do for a typical company before making up a mind in terms of whether to invest in or not. So that's how we go about a process. And obviously, our investment strategy is a bit different from the way we approach in the regular set of funds for this fund itself.
So Bharat, that's fantastic. आप इतना thorough research करते हैं और इतना on ground जाकर evaluate करते हैं companies को. I feel that's the reason you are able to find very good 1 out of 3 companies. For anyone, tracking the IPOs, and अगर आप Edelweiss recently listed IPO fund को भी देखेंगे, तो काफी ऐसे नाम आप देखोगे जो कि फीचर करता है, जैसे कि Mankind, Avalon Tech, Idea Forge, Utkarsh Small Finance Bank, Divgi Transfer, Sign DLF. These have been one of the most stellar IPOs and also the most promising companies. इनका केवल लिस्टिंग डे गेन्स पर मत जाइएगा, उसके बाद भी देखिएगा कितना सस्टेन्ड सा इसमें प्रोग्रेस होते जा रहा है. एज अ कंपनी वो फंडामेंटली कितने अच्छे से प्रोग्रेस कर पा रहे हैं, और ये सारी चीजें हो पा रही है बिकॉज आप इतना थरो रिसर्च कर रहे हैं. पर भरत, दिस ब्रिंग्स मी टू माय नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन, व्हिच इज, अब ये सप्लायर से बात करना हुआ, ये कस्टमर से बात करना हुआ, ये कंपनी के प्रमोटर से बात करना, ये सब तो आप कर सकते हैं. आप फंड मैनेजर है, आप इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टर है, आप कर सकते हैं. बट व्हाट अबाउट द लिटिल गाय ऑन द स्ट्रीट, जो कि बहुत ही एक्साइटेड रहता है कि जब भी कोई नया कंपनी है उसमें आईपीओ में पार्टिसिपेट करना होता है. इनफैक्ट काफी ऐसी कहानियां जनरेशन टू जनरेशन चलती रहती है, जहां पे हमने सुना है कि हमारे दादाजी ने या हमारे नाना जी ने एक आईपीओ के समय में एक शेयर खरीद लिया, which is worth so much more today. So what about that little guy on the street who is aspiring to do the same for his lifetime? What are those basic hygiene checklists that he should do, at least bare minimum, if he decides to go about and invest on his own in any IPO? वो bare minimum क्या criteria होना चाहिए उसके लिए?
So one of the things, or I'm saying 3-4 things one should look at this is that in IPO market you also have to look at growth stock. Don't try to find value companies in the IPO space. There are huge chances that you will get into a value trap in many of these companies. We have time and again seen IPO is all about how the company is going to grow in next 3-5 years, not about the companies coming at a very cheap valuation, and hence it should be a subscribe to the IPO. That is one. Second important aspect from a retail investor point of view is that please do a research in terms of how the company profitability has been historical in context. When I'm just saying, obviously that is an important aspect, but also look at it from a perspective in terms of what is the cross cycle. Across cycle, how the company has actually delivered numbers. So not recent past, maybe a couple of years, but also in the last 5 years, if they can get data, that would also be useful to understand the company's profitability across cycle. Third important aspect too is not only about that, but also about the overall strength of the sector to that extent, how the sector is going fast to that extent. There are times where the sector actually gives a lot of impetus to the company. So I'm just saying, if the sector is doing well, there are high chances the companies within that sector can do very well to that extent. And we have seen across time periods, we have seen companies coming within the IPO space, similar set of companies coming in the IPO space and taking advantage of this company just because there is a secular growth in the sector itself. If you look at it, in somewhere around 2016-17, very insurance company got listed, kind of stuff. In 17-18, you saw many NBFC company getting listed. In 20 kind of stuff, many chemical companies started getting listed. In 21, many internet companies got started getting listed. If you look at 22, many manufacturing, defense, and all these companies started getting listed. So you will see many sectoral tailwinds help those companies to that extent. Within those companies, you need to identify which are the unique companies, what is the unique proposition the company is actually offering. So if you're trying to select those companies and do a lot of research on the financials, I think the retail investor should be sorted out in terms of selecting many of these names.
I feel that's a fairly exhaustive, comprehensive list that you have shared. But at the same time, it seems super, super, super helpful. And the most helpful thing about it is all of this is available in the public domain. अगर आप एक retail investor है, आपके पास DRHP की एक्सेस होती है, आपके पास एनुअल रिपोर्ट्स की एक्सेस होती है, आपके पास सारी इंफॉर्मेशन की एक्सेस होती है, जो कि आप इंटरनेट के द्वारा डाउनलोड कर सकते हैं. कंपनीज जनरली अपने वेबसाइट पर ये इंफॉर्मेशन रिफ्लेक्ट करते हैं, या फिर आपको साथ ही साथ सेबी के भी वेबसाइट पर ये इंफॉर्मेशन मिल सकती है. कई जगह पर पब्लिकली अवेलेबल है ये सारी इंफॉर्मेशन, जो कि आपको केवल पढ़ना है, इंफॉर्मेशन को सिंथेसाइज करना है और बहुत ही रैशनली एक डिसीजन लेना है. So Bharat, I feel it is fantastic. You have given such a fine way to look at life over here, that I feel it should really put investors on the right path when investing in an IPO. One important thing, like when we talk about investments, any conversation is incomplete if we don't talk about risk. सो आईपीओ इन्वेस्टिंग में ऐसे क्या रिस्क है जो कि बहुत ही स्पेसिफिक टू आईपीओ इन्वेस्टिंग होती है? आई मीन इक्विटीज में तो रिस्क होती है, बट स्पेसिफिक टू आईपीओ इन्वेस्टिंग.
So as we said, okay, all IPOs don't make money, and I'm just saying if you look at history, obviously there are many companies which have actually wound up even after doing an IPO. There are many companies which have. If you look at last 15 years, there are 4 or 5 companies which have actually ceased to exist. So you have to be very cautious. This is a good universe to look at it, but it also carries a lot of risk, which you don't have history of the companies in the public domain. Public domain is very different from what companies operate in a private domain. They have to be very cautious because every action is being looked by the investors in a very different frame of references. There are investors with short-term horizon, there are investors with long-term horizon. So a company has to trade very carefully in the public domain, and hence it's very important to look at those risks very much in terms of how the company is going to behave post listing to that extent. So one of the thing is that history is not there, so that risk is always there, how the company is going to react to new set of news. Secondly, one has to always monitor what the company said during the IPO process, whether the company is actually adhering to that or not. So I'm just saying there are times where company says ABCD things during the IPO proceeds to raise capital and then eventually actually divert from the said path. And typically those said path can be good or could not be so good depending upon the new opportunity arises. So somebody has to be always cognizant about it, what the company said and how that is panning off. If the company is saying ABCD things and it is not panning off as per the requirement, then typically you should actually, there should be a bell ringing in your minds in terms of what one should do about it, because that can change the entire profile what you had invested for. So we have seen many times companies saying that we want to do a product, and then post IPO, given that they have access to capital, given they have access to, the brand has increased substantially, they now want to go do B product or C product. Purely could be economical reason or could be for other reason. But I'm just saying, all said and done, that is a cause of concern, and that is a risk which a company's investor, a secondary market participant investor is taking in. Third important aspect about IPO investing is that one has to be very cognizant of the fact that in the IPO market, there are times where the numbers, with what you look at it, always looks very promising. The historical numbers looks very promising. One has to look at cross cycle numbers rather than just purely last couple of quarter numbers. One has to look at how the numbers are going to behave in a not so great cycle kind of stuff. So look at normalized numbers to that extent. Look at out years, how things are going to pan off if the economic environment is not so stable. And that is also a risk which one needs to evaluate while looking at numbers to that extent. And finally, all said and done, if the promoters are good enough, I'm just saying if you do a lot of cross check on promoters, that would also help actually retail investor to actually cut off many of the investors. In IPO investing, apart from selection, there is avoidance. How to avoid IPO, that is very important kind of stuff. There are times where we have made alpha over the index just because of avoiding companies rather than selecting companies. So that is also an important aspect of investing in general, to avoid some of these companies.
So Bharat, I feel towards the fag end you have left viewers on a very wonderful cliffhanger. I feel we'll have to have a separate episode on what are the red flags and how to avoid IPOs. I feel they do that. They do that well enough. They're good to go. Just like you said, that has helped you deliver alpha. As we move this conversation towards an end, I'd like to zoom in and bring the conversation to an episode that's far more closer to you. एंड आई पर्सनली बीन क्वाइट इंक्विजिटिव. आप इतने क्लोजली आईपीओस को ट्रैक करते जा रहे हो, अभी 5 साल के ऊपर हो चुके हैं ये एडलवाइस रिसेंटली लिस्टेड आईपीओस फंड को चलते हुए. उससे पहले भी चल रहे थे, एक अलग अवतार में चल रहा था फंड, राइट? एंड यू हैव बीन लुकिंग एट आईपीओस वेरी क्लोजली. Would you like to share any fun incident or any interesting episode pertinent to an IPO that would help us view IPOs in a very different light than what most people seem to talk about when it comes to IPOs?
So three things one has to be very cognizant about IPO markets is uh, the listing day or subscription number doesn't say anything. We have time and again seen companies having a huge subscription numbers but getting listed poorly. We have seen companies actually done very good listing but done poorly later on. We have seen companies actually done very bad on subscription numbers but done decently well on listing and post listing also. We have seen companies not doing so great on listing but actually have delivered far better returns post IPO kind of stuff. So I'm just saying IPO market is a funny market. For short term, you could have random outcomes which can come in, but the long term track record of the company is based on the earnings trajectory of the company. So if you look at it, there are times where there has been bullish. Let's to give you some examples. We had seen one of the uh, uh, IPOs which were coming during COVID times, where there was huge demand just before COVID. I'm saying talking about it, there was a huge demand for IPOs, and consequently the subscription numbers were pretty high. But after that, COVID stuck up, and because of that, actually listing was pretty tepid. And once the COVID situation settled off, actually the IPO did very well to that extent. So we have seen empty an example where these kind of thing happen in the IPO market. So my advice is don't look at just subscription numbers, don't look at just listing day gain numbers. They could be for very short term perspective could change the direction of the company. Company actually is the first step of public life time period. I'm saying this is the first baby step which companies comes in the public domain. This is the first birthday, if you could call it, for them on the public life space. And there would be many birthdays which you could celebrate as the company do well from that perspective. So idea is to hold good set of companies, build on it. That is one. Second, interesting is that this IPO market is all about multiple themes to be played out. So one of the thing was interesting about IPO market is that you're not playing single theme, you're playing multiple themes. There are times where themes do change out. So it's a changing theme IPO scenario kind of stuff. As I said, historically it was insurance company, diagnostic company, then there is NBFC, then there is a chemical company, then there is a defense company, then there is a manufacturing company. So you're playing different themes in IPO market, and it's very exciting for me as a such kid that you look many different set of companies within a single fund depending upon the market scenario. So that's very interesting and that's very fulfilling to me in terms of understanding the company and trying to analyze it. So leaving out at this, and if you have more questions, happy to answer.
So, Bharat, I especially loved your analogy on how it is the birthday. The listing day is a birthday of a company in the public domain, on the public bourses, in the public capital markets. I feel, one can really draw this parallel. जब एक बच्चा पैदा होता है, so उससे पहले, it spends 9 months in the womb, right? So this just before the listing day, before the IPO, the company is in the private markets. That's its period of being in the womb, and then finally it's the day of delivery, that is the day of listing, and then the baby is born, the company is finally listed, and just by how the baby acts or reacts on its birth date doesn't determine how the baby's behavior is going to be ahead, or what kind of a person is that baby going to grow up to be. It says nothing. So babies act randomly, and people interact with babies in a rather random fashion. It is only when the baby grows up that there is a whole lot more semblance to the relationship and to the behavior. So, Bharat, I feel it was fantastic chatting up with you. There is just so much that we got to learn, and I definitely now know more about IPOs and the way to look at IPOs than what I knew at the start of this episode. Thank you for that. I'm sure it's the same with all of our viewers. So it has been wonderful having this conversation, and thank you for not holding anything back, and sharing as much wisdom as you could during this rather brief conversation.
Thank you, Nirav.